Tracy Marcel Palmer, and I've been a nurse in labor and delivery at TMH for 24 years. When I considered what patient experience I wanted to share, many scenarios over the years came to mind. I know many people think that labor and delivery is full of joy and empowerment as we encourage and support women through the process of labor, delivering, and bonding with their newborn. So many times that is just the case. It's touching, rewarding, and it fills my soul. There truly isn't anything like it. You can almost hear the soundtrack music in the background. It has made this job fulfilling for the last 2.5 decades. But what most people don't realize is that I spend just as much time trying to deal with non-labor, non-delivery situations, asking tons of admission questions, answering patient questions, trying to stop actual or threatened preterm labor, trying to reassure you that it isn't because you went to work or grocery shopping or school or had sex last night, trying to help you work through all the information you have Googled. And as you can imagine, when we aren't encouraging, asking questions, or answering questions, the hardest part is being with a family as they are grieving the loss of a baby or an imminent loss. There is nothing like the cry of a mother for her child, but there's a strong sense of purpose in that. I feel in caring for these patients, a quiet waiting, a serving, more hard questions. Have you chosen a funeral home? Do you have a name for your baby? Do you want a baptism while you're here at the hospital? That knowing role is to wait with you, wait on you to process, wait on you to ask a different kind of encouragement, encouraging you to hold and name your lifeless newborn. Although these moments I don't think test my compassion, I do think they increase my compassion and encourage my empathy.
Dr. Brown asked somebody to speak, and this is what she has written down to say. The topic is compassion when you don't want to go, and showing compassion when you don't want to go.
I'm going to ask everybody to, hi everyone, if you can mute your microphone, we can hear you.
Can you go ahead and mute?
Mute them all.
Done. Okay, go ahead.
I've had my share of personal life experiences that have prepared me for being a more patient, more compassionate person, and a more patient and compassionate nurse. During my years here as a nurse, I've lost my father to metastasized prostate cancer. My husband at 39 years of age was rushed into our ER and unable to be revived after having a pulmonary embolism. And then my mother was taken off life support here in our ICU after over a week of hoping and praying for a miracle. And 2 years ago, my son was rushed in on an ambulance after going to the Northeast ER and rushed into the OR here for emergency surgery for a testicular torsion. And prior to that, we had felt like everything for the two of us was going pretty good. I was very concerned how we would be perceived and received and the care we would get in the hospital as we were uninsured. Everything worked out, but it does make you, the more life experiences you have, I think they affect how you care and relate and show compassion to other people. I can imagine how my questions must have sounded, knowing very little about these other areas in the ICU, the ER, the OR, the recovery room. I'm thankful for all the compassion and support I was provided. All these personal incidents also helped me grow as a nurse. I also know a door I've had to fill my compassion box before entering the room. And I think a lot of those times lately have been of COVID-19 positive patients. I have not wondered if you were one of those among us. I have to not wonder if you were one of those among us refusing to wear a mask or using your mask as a chin cover. I have to not worry if this situation would lead my now 14-year-old son from growing up in a single parent home to being an orphan. I have to trust that those around me, the science, the decision makers, and God will protect and provide. So I go in and provide. I provide the same care that I would want for myself and any of my loved ones. All that to get to how I handle my feelings when I don't want to go in the room. And for me, that is mean patients, the angry ones, the mean patient for no reason. It's just nasty. I think nothing that they have said or explained justifies their awful behavior. I recently had such a patient. You know, the one that has already fired 3 nurses and 1 doctor before you got here? That's another topic for another discussion. Can a patient fire a provider? And if so, under what circumstances? You just already have your reservations. When the charge nurse says, I thought you would be good for this patient because you are so patient. Then when the nurse giving you report says, these are the people she has fired and doesn't want back in her room, and begins to label off 4 or 5 other names. I don't know about you, but it's hard for me to get excited about entering this room. I'm hopeful. Maybe the other nurse overreacted. Maybe the next nurse was biased by the previous nurse's firing. This may go well for me. After all, I am a people person. My senior superlative was personality plus. Hopeful, yes. Excited, no. When I enter the patient's dark room at 7:30, she is fast asleep. She is contracting for the electronic fetal monitoring, and she's obviously comfortable with her epidural. I write my name on the board, trying to be as quiet as a mouse, and her support person in the dark says good morning. I tiptoe over to her at the bedside and introduce myself. Hello, my name is Stacy, and I'm a nurse today. I heard you had a rough night, so I'm going to let her rest. Don't hesitate to call me if you need anything. I check back at 8:30. Lights are still off. Monitors are showing good fetal heart tones and the patient's vital signs are stable. I go to triage around the corner from this patient's room and get into a conversation with the house supervisor who is making rounds, only to return to see my charge nurse in an intense conversation with this patient's mother, who is loudly stating, I just need to know what is happening. Pretty much everything you could happen. She hasn't been checked in hours. She's in pain. Everything's wrong. My charge nurse is shorter than me. I'm 5'2". My patient is 6'2", and her mom is just a little shorter than her. I rush over and explain, I've been in there, I've done my introduction, she hasn't called out, I was letting her rest, all the things I could do to sound like this is not the emergency this person is making it out to be. I walk into the room, the patient is sitting straight up in her bed. She is fussing, letting me know exactly how unhappy she is with me. She is demanding to see her midwife. By the way, she had fired that midwife earlier, but no one else is available at the time. I'm asking if she wants to be checked. She is continuing to say she is in pain. I'm trying to explain to her her options. We need to check and make sure you aren't completely dilated. We can call anesthesia, you can have an epidural bolus. I try to remain calm. I'm not sure if she is trying or not, but she continues to be mean and agitated. We get her a bolus. The way she screams and the things she says to her African-American mother are shocking. She is telling her mother in the nastiest of tones that she is about to get kicked out of the room too. Her mother is so calm, like she has seen this before, like this is normal and acceptable behavior. Now I feel bad. She obviously has had a brain injury or some diagnosis I was not aware of, because no black mom in the Florida Panhandle that I know would allow their 28-year-old daughter, in pain or not, to speak to them like that. She is equally rude when the provider arrives. The provider nicely but sternly holds her ground, explaining you may not like what I'm saying, but I've never lied to you. We teach her the most efficient ways to push. She is somewhat more pleasant as we get ready to begin pushing. I've offered to just stay in the room with her the whole time before this happened. And she's like, I would like that. I was like, I'll bring my stuff in here. I won't leave. Just me and you. You're my only patient. I was just trying to let you rest. As much as she doesn't like me, she seems to like the idea of me sitting next to her. So I said, that's what we'll do. But then it was almost time to deliver, so we got started pushing. And we probably started a little bit early because everybody involved wanted this whole process to be over as soon as possible. I will say she pushed like a champion, and she pushed, and she pushed, and she pushed, and continued to push for over an hour. Almost an hour and a half. Right at delivery, maybe 5 minutes before, she starts just screaming, I can't push anymore. I just can't. You gotta stop. I'm so hot. Okay, like, you gotta calm down. This is not pushing. We give her cold washcloths. We advance the washcloths with ice in them, just trying to keep her happy and making progress. Then at delivery, just as the head coming out, she's screaming, and she says, I can't breathe. I can't. I told you I can't breathe. I can't push. And then a couple seconds later, she kind of goes limp, closes her eyes, and is not responding. This whole not responding incident lasted for about 11 seconds. A little tiny sternal rub, and she was with us. In the meantime, we had already called for the MET team. The charge nurse came. The MET team was canceled. A beautiful delivery was had. She did not want the baby skin to skin because it's dirty. We tried to explain to her it's not dirty. We talked about the benefits of Vernix. The baby was wiped off. She assessed it as clean enough and put it on her chest. We considered that a win. While we were waiting, the doctor began to order other tests. Said, can we go ahead and get, some labs? Can we get what else did they order? An EKG, a CT, and a cardiology consult. Because something happened. Well, something happened. We don't know what. The EKG was abnormal and said possible MI. We waited, and I took her down to CT on her same bed she delivered in, which was a feet. Stayed with her while she was there, brought her back, and she grew more and more upset because she didn't like the fact that we had took her down there and nothing really happened. I'm like, well, you were the one that said you couldn't breathe. We just want to make sure nothing's wrong. We're trying to help you. She didn't like the way the nursery nurse wanted to feed her baby. They were trying to spoon feed the baby. She got very irate about the breastfeeding situation, about how little her baby's stomach is, and why do y'all kind of feed my baby when my baby just wants to sleep? We tried to encourage her. I left the room. I came back a little while later, and a girlfriend came in, was sitting in the rocking chair when I walked in, and she says, I want to talk to you about this bath situation. Why do you call it a situation? Because it is a situation. Ain't nobody bathed this baby. And I said, well, we try not to bathe babies and try to explain our rationale and how they have temperature regulation issues and how this actually is a good idea to wait. Well, how long are we going to wait? Well, right now we're trying to work on ruling out some cardiac issues, and then I'm sure once she's upstairs and stable, they'll work on a bath in a timely fashion. Well, I just want to know. Well, by now, the doctor's in the room, and it's like, who is this friend with this attitude? Like, I want her gone. I want security to come and remove her. I'm like, I wish we wouldn't go, because now I'm like 9 hours into this compassionate care, and the last thing I want to do is get my patient all riled up because you're making her visitor leave. Everybody knows the COVID visitor policy. I'm not sure how she got past security, but there she was, and here she sat, went to make sure this baby got a bath. I said, I think at this point it's not the right move. Let's just let her stay. It's just going to get the patient all upset. Security let her up. It looks bad for me to say she's got to go. She stayed, and eventually, on her own, about 20 minutes later, she had someplace else to go, and she left. Look at God. Well, like I said, she had an abnormal EKG. The CT was ruled normal, so they had ruled out clots and amniotic fluid embolism. And I'll just say, does she deserve the care she got? Absolutely. I think about, what if she had had less compassionate nurse? What if something really is wrong? What if the person who didn't have the patience to deal with her blew her off and she later had a heart attack during the night because nobody cared, because her attitude warranted her undeserving of compassionate care? I always think about when people are not their best, who knows what happened in their life to make them this way? Maybe that's why her mom's okay with it. Maybe she suffered some extremely traumatic event in her life. Maybe her life has been full of disappointment, and everyone has allowed her to behave this. But either way, it is what it is. Did I deserve the attitude that I got? I think not. But it's the job I signed up for. Self-care for me that day was going home, texting with some girlfriends that are also nurses, and going to bed. If you had patients like mine, and I know myself, parents like mine, and I find myself telling my own son this, I have to do things every day that I don't wanna do. And as Nike says, just do it. I feel like that's our duty as nurses. I don't think that compassion's always easy, but I think patients deserve it. And I think when we go in the door, we just have to give it to them, whether we want to or not. That's my story.